The fluorescent lights in that sterile Boston office buzzed like a swarm of unspoken regrets, casting long shadows across the cluttered desk where Ethan sat, his fingers tracing the edge of a faded security clearance badge. It was the kind of morning where the coffee tasted like yesterday's defeat, and the air hung heavy with the scent of printer ink and forgotten promises. Ethan had been here for 8 years, a quiet guardian in a world of loud climbers, the one who made sure the gears of federal contracts turned without a hitch. He wasn't the type to boast about it, hell. He barely spoke unless it was to flag a discrepancy in a compliance log. But today, as he logged into the system and saw his name scrubbed from the roster for Project Aegis, that $280 million beast of a defense logistics overhaul, something inside him cracked. Not loudly, not with a shatter that anyone could hear, but with the slow, deliberate fracture of a man who'd given everything only to be erased like a typo in a footnote. He remembered the exact moment it started. 2 weeks back, in the glass-walled conference room overlooking the Charles River. The team was prepping for the big kickoff. Suits pressed, egos inflated. Everyone buzzing about synergies and scalability like they were reciting scripture from some Silicon Valley Bible. Ethan stood off to the side, his tie slightly askew, notebook in hand, double-checking the Tier 3 clearances for the contractors. He'd caught 3 red flags already, minor stuff, like outdated background checks that could derail the whole deal if the feds sniffed them out. He fixed them quietly, as always, without fanfare. That's who he was, the invisible architect of stability in a house built on quicksand. But then Alex sauntered in, the new VP of Operations, fresh from some overhyped startup acquisition, with his gelled hair and that perpetual smirk that screamed, "I've got this all figured out." Alex clapped Ethan on the back a little too hard, like they were old pals, and said, "Hey, buddy, love the dedication. But we're going for a fresher vibe with the client-facing roles. Optics matter. You know?" Ethan's stomach twisted, but he just nodded, swallowing the bile rising in his throat. Optics. As if 8 years of flawless audits were worth less than a polished headshot. That night, alone in his cramped apartment in Cambridge, the weight settled in like fog off the harbor. He stared at the email confirming his removal from the project cold. Corporate jargon about role optimization and strategic alignment. No mention of the nights he'd spent poring over federal protocols. The times he'd saved their asses from compliance violations that could have cost millions in fines. Betrayal wasn't new to Ethan. Life had dealt him plenty of blows. From a childhood marked by a father's abandonment to a marriage that crumbled under the strain of his relentless work ethic. But this was personal. A quiet knife twisted by people who'd climbed on his back only to kick him off the ladder. He didn't rage or punch walls. Instead, he sat in the dim light of his laptop, logging back into the federal portal with credentials that still hummed with authority. His fingers hovered over the delegation toggle, the one switch that controlled who could step into his shoes. Federal rules were ironclad, no quick swaps without a 90-day vetting process. With a deep breath, he disabled it, typing a neutral log note, reassignment pending review. It wasn't sabotage, it was adherence. But deep down, in the recesses of his wounded pride, he knew it was the first thread in a web of silent retribution. The next few days blurred into a haze of isolation. Ethan showed up at 7:15 sharp. Same as always, his khakis bearing the faint crease from years of the same routine. But now, his access was read-only, his emails ignored. He watched from his cubicle as Alex paraded around like a peacock, introducing Sarah as the interim security liaison. She was sharp, no doubt mid-30s, Ivy League polish, with a wardrobe that screamed executive potential. But she was green. her knowledge of the protocol's surface level. Copied from Ethan's old docs with a fresh coat of buzzwords. "We're modernizing compliance," Alex announced in a team huddle. His voice dripping with false confidence. Ethan felt a pang. Not just of anger, but of something deeper, a hollow ache from years of being overlooked. Of pouring his soul into a system that valued flash over substance. He thought of his ex-wife's parting words, "You're too quiet. Ethan. People walk all over you because you let them." Was she right? The doubt gnawed at him. But he pushed it down, letting the silence build like pressure in a fault line. By midweek, the tension simmered beneath the surface, invisible to everyone but Ethan. He forwarded himself the HR memo, "We're aligning with a more presentable front for stakeholders. This isn't about your performance, just optics." Optics again. The word burned like acid. He highlighted it. Stuck a note on his monitor, noted. Then he did what he did best, waited. No complaints to HR. No heated confrontations. Just meticulous observation as the team barreled toward disaster. Sarah submitted her checklists. All glossy and optimistic. Blind to the federal tripwires. Alex high-fived the legal team, toasting to streamlined efficiency over craft beers in the lounge. Ethan sipped his black coffee alone, the bitterness mirroring the resentment coiling in his chest. He could have warned them. Could have sent a single email outlining the protocols they'd ignored. But why? They'd betrayed him. Reduced him to a relic in their quest for shiny new things. The pain of that rejection fueled his inaction. A quiet storm gathering force. The kickoff loomed like a guillotine. And Ethan's apartment became his war room. He reviewed the federal directives he'd memorized years ago, Clause 7b. Buried in the fine print, no launch without the credentialed liaison present and validated. His name was still there. Etched in digital stone. Undelegated and unyielding. Sleep evaded him. Replaced by visions of the fallout, Alex's smirk crumbling. Sarah's confidence shattering. It wasn't glee he felt, it was justice. Raw and unvarnished. The kind that comes at a cost to everyone involved. He thought of the price he'd pay: alienation. Perhaps a tarnished reputation, but the wound of their indifference demanded reckoning. On the eve of the meeting, he declined the calendar invite without a word, letting the system tick onward like a bomb with no visible fuse. The boardroom that morning was a facade of perfection, polished oak table. Ergonomic chairs aligned with military precision. The Boston skyline framing it all like a power play. At 9 a.m., Alex launched into a spiel, voice booming with rehearsed charisma. "Welcome to Project Aegis. We're excited to demonstrate our compliant, cutting-edge approach." Sarah stood beside him, badge gleaming, folder in hand. But then the federal rep, a grizzled veteran with a clipboard and no patience for bullshit, interrupted, "Confirm your security liaison of record." The room froze. Alex gestured to Sarah, but the rep shook his head. "The cleared agent per registry." "Validate now," Sarah stammered, her poise cracking like thin ice. Legal fumbled through tablets, faces paling as the truth emerged. No delegation filed. Number 90-day approval. Ethan's name glared from the screen. The sole holder. Panic erupted, whispers turning to accusations. Alex's charm dissolving into desperation. They called Ethan, but he let it ring. The silence his loudest statement. The meeting imploded. The $280 million deal halted. Stakeholders storming out with veiled threats of penalties. The aftermath was chaos. A whirlwind of emergency huddles and finger-pointing. The CEO demanded answers, her voice echoing through the halls. How the hell did we forget the one guy holding the keys? Alex was hauled into a closed-door session, emerging ashen, his transition out announced by day's end. Sarah slunk to a demoted role. Her growth experience a hollow echo. Ethan, sipping tea in a nearby cafe, watched the emails flood in, urgent pleas for his return. He responded coolly, for protocol. Reinstatement required. It took 72 hours, forms filed. Clearances synced. When he walked back in, the office felt smaller, the air thick with unspoken apologies. He resumed his duties without fanfare. But the scar remained. A reminder of the cost of betrayal. They thought silence meant weakness. It was his sharpest blade. And in the end, the empire they'd built on sand paid the price. While Ethan stood, unbroken but forever changed.